All right, we're live. Bryan Myers, welcome to the future of fitness.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, pleasure, real pleasure. As I was telling you prior to recording, I've heard nothing but good things about you. And during my cursory research and talking to people across the industry, and so it's great to have you. I mean, Solidcore's been in the news mostly positively over the last year. A lot of really good things happening. So it seems like you're in a really good spot to grow this thing. And so you have a lot of great insights. And also, of course, you're going to be speaking at the Connected Health and Fitness Summit coming up in 2024. We'll get into what that topic is. And, just to plug in now, if people want to join that conference, it's very intimate. It's very pointed. It's very valuable. And of course, you can get a discount with FOF10 if you go to the website as well. So I'll throw that out there. But Bryan, man, so much to talk about with you. Let's just start with your background. You've been with Solidcore for 5 years, right? But you do have a vast background. So let's get into that, set the table a little bit, and then we'll get into all the things we want to discuss today.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me, Eric. Excited to be here. I'm glad to hear that you're only hearing good things out there about me in the marketplace. It's an expensive reputation management that I'm doing, paying all these people off. But I'm glad that it's working.
Good ROI.
Exactly. Yeah. So different than, frankly, a lot of people in the fitness industry, which I didn't know before I got into this industry, but a lot of people in this industry, I would say, were kind of like born and raised in it and, started their careers, many of them as personal trainers, and then worked their way up in the club and then started to manage one club and then manage multiple and then, have these amazing roles now for some of the biggest brands out there in fitness. I did not find my way into fitness through that path. I started my career in business. So I graduated with an undergraduate degree in business, and I immediately went into business strategy consulting at one of the large consulting firms. And I did that for about 5 years, had an incredible time. It allowed me to really build my toolkit of skills that helped me think through how to solve business problems and business challenges and how to go after large business opportunities. I then had a little bit of an entrepreneurial itch after doing that for 5 years and wanted to take that toolkit that I had kind of developed at BCG into, quote, the real world and have my first sort of big boy job. And I did that with a brand called Sweetgreen, which here in the United States is now a relatively well-known brand in the health and wellness space from a food perspective. But at the time that I joined the company, was actually a pretty small regional player. And so I joined the team. They had just taken their first major round of private equity funding, and I got to be a part of that leadership team as we grew and scaled that concept from the regional player here in the DC metro area to the national brand that it has become. It's now a public company and has gone off to be really successful as a brand. I was doing that and frankly having a great time. And while I was doing it, I had found this workout called Solidcore. The workout, frankly, I should say it found me because it was a buddy of mine from college who was one of the early coaches at Solidcore. And he was like, you got to come try this workout. It's insane. It's like nothing that you've ever done. And at the time I was, running a few days a week, working out with a personal trainer a time or two a week, and then doing some of my own kind of gym workouts. So I was pretty physically active. I thought I was in pretty good shape, and he kept being like, you got to come do this workout with me. And so one day I finally was like, okay, great, I'll come do it. And I did it, and it absolutely humbled me, Eric. I was like, I cannot believe what I just went through. And truth be told, it took me a few months before I came back because I was just like, whatever that was, I don't need it. But once I did come back, it became this like constant in my life, right? Like I was traveling a lot when I was at Sweetgreen, and whenever I would go to a market where there was a Solidcore, I would look for it. Or even if I went to a market where there wasn't Solidcore, I looked for the closest thing to it. It became the place that I went when I was stressed. It became the place that I went when I wanted time to myself. And of course, it was a kick-ass workout. And so fast forward a few years after spending time at Sweetgreen and helping to grow that concept, I got introduced to Anne, who was the founder of Solidcore. And It was a similar story. She had just taken her first round of private equity funding and was looking to grow and scale this from being kind of a pretty DC focused brand at the time to being kind of a national footprint. And it was this perfect marriage between a skill set that I had and developed and a passion of mine, which was the Solidcore workout and the Solidcore community. And 5.5 years later, I've been here ever since.
Awesome, man. What was it about the solid core experience, like as a consumer, the workout, everything? Like what was it about it that really kind of entrapped you?
There are a few things, Eric, that I would say. First and foremost, and I always say this when I talk about solid core, and it's frankly sad that in our industry that we have to say this sometimes, but it's that the workout works. When you go there and you show up for 50 minutes, you actually get an amazing workout that's going to transform your body and help make you stronger. And so that was thing number one, was just that when I showed up there over the course of 50 minutes, I knew I was going to walk out of that room having gained strength that I didn't have when I walked into it. The second was, as I mentioned, I was running sometimes, I was working out at the gym sometimes, I was doing a little bit of boutique fitness. And the thing that I loved about Solid Core is that it gave me a really well-rounded workout. And so we go through, all of the major muscle groups of the body. So we're doing upper body, we're doing core, we're doing obliques, we're doing lower body, but we're not just working out the muscles that you typically work out. So we're not just doing glute and quad focused workouts, which is what you get in a lot of other fitness activities, but we're doing things like we're working on your inner thighs, those stabilizer muscles that you don't normally work when you're doing other workouts. We're actually working out not just your inner glutes, but we're working out your outer glutes, those things that help keep you in balance and keep you stable so that it prevents injury as you're doing other things. And so I love the well-rounded nature of the workout. And then lastly is the community. The solid core community, I liken it to a brother or a sisterhood. It's not the community that's like where you go to see and be seen. That's not what our community is about. Our community is a collective of people who all have a deep commitment to create the strongest version of themselves. And that doesn't just mean when they come into a solid core studio, it's actually how they live their life in every aspect. And so being surrounded by this collective of like-minded, really passionate, hardworking people always kept me inspired. And so as a consumer, like I said, once I got over kind of the fact that I wasn't great at the workout the first time around, it definitely kept me hooked.
Right on, man. Right on. That's great. Great story. And I want to maybe give us an overview of the last year. I was doing a little bit of research. A lot has gone on, right? There's been a lot of excitement, a lot of change with Solid Core. So maybe just, summarize what some of the high points of the last year. And just so people know, this is Q3 2023 that we're recording right now.
Absolutely. So I will rewind actually a little bit further and say, when I came on board 5.5 years ago, I started as COO. And about 2.5 years ago, our founder transitioned out of the business from a day-to-day management perspective, and I became the CEO. And what we've done over that period has really been what I would really call a transformation of the business as we go from where we were to the next level. And so some of the things that we've done over the last year, one is we expanded to the West Coast, which was a huge untapped market for us, but a market that we knew that if we were going to go, we had to do it right because it's a highly competitive fitness market. So we launched in LA, we launched in Seattle, and we announced that we are coming to the Bay Area.
Nice.
So that West Coast expansion has been huge. The other thing that we did is we crossed the threshold of 100 locations, which was a major milestone. When I joined this company 5.5 years ago, that was actually the milestone that Anne laid out that she wanted to achieve, which was like, how do I get this company to 100 locations? And we were able to successfully hit that milestone, which was huge for us. So we now operate about 105 locations across 27 states and the District of Columbia. And then really, really excitingly, we went through a financial transaction earlier this year. So in the spring of 2023, our founder officially fully transitioned. She had already transitioned from a leadership perspective, but she financially transitioned the company to private equity ownership. And so we are now majority owned by a private equity firm out of San Francisco called VMG. And then we have a minority private equity sponsor called Kohlberg and Company out of New York. And while, of course, that transaction was a huge moment for our founder, as a female entrepreneur, there aren't very many people who, one, build a company that can endure for 10 years, two, build a company that can get to the size and scale that Solidcore has, and three, get to that level of financial exit. So it was a major milestone for her, and frankly, what that represented for all female entrepreneurs out there. And I would also say it was an incredible moment for our industry. Since COVID, there really hadn't been any significant private equity transactions within the boutique fitness space. And the reason that was is because all of the boutique fitness companies were really struggling and just trying to pay their bills and trying to keep their doors open and trying to keep staff on payroll. So any of the deals that you saw get done were frankly more distressed type deals. And the Solidcore transaction, I think, marked a major turning point in our industry where we got to be the one to proclaim on behalf of an industry that boutique fitness is back. And it's not just about Solidcore being back, but we are seeing it in all of our peers that the industry is really recuperated to, and for many of us, beyond where we were pre-COVID. So that was an incredible, really exciting milestone, not just for the company, but for the industry.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of boutique, and just kind of side note, when you look at the macro picture of where boutique is, I mean, a lot of different opinions. One opinion is like, large health clubs, especially with the consolidation phase that we seem to be in now, like, they're taking boutique experiences under their roof and they're trying to recreate them. Now, will they ever be as good as the actual boutique? No, probably not, right? They just won't be. But it gives some of those consumers like, well, I can do a spinning class there. I can do yoga class. I can do Pilates. Like, it's not going to be as high quality maybe as not maybe, it just probably, it won't be as a solid course and the other one. So what do you think about that particular trend? Is it something that you think is A, true, and B, do you think it's something noteworthy as you kind of strategize moving forward?
It's an important trend that we certainly keep our eye on as a business. I tend to agree with you, Eric, in that part of what makes us special is that we do what we do. It's all that we do, and we do it really, really well. And so the people who are coming to boutique, who are paying a premium price point to have that experience, expect that type of experience. They expect the operator to do what they do, focus on what they do, and do it really, really, really well. And so while the big box players may start to emulate a little bit of what some of us in the boutique fitness space are doing, I think they're always going to have that gap of being able to really demonstrate that value. And so for the discerning consumer who wants that level of experience, I think boutique is always going to be there for them and be the option of choice. That being said, I'm also not one of these people that looks around at our industry and looks at everyone else like they're the boogeyman that's going to ultimately disrupt our business. There are a lot of people who are not physically active at all, and even more who are physically active, but not as physically active as they should be per the CDC or that they want to be. And so there are so many consumers out there that represent opportunities for all of us. And so as I look at the landscape, I think it's amazing that big box gyms are doing what they're doing. I think it's also amazing that we're doing what we're doing, because at the end of the day, we are trying to create a more healthy society, and it's going to take all of us showing up and meeting the consumer where they are in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, well said. Well, let's get in, Brian, to some of the topics that you and I had talked about earlier. And maybe this coincides well with what we just talked about, because I'm just curious, like, coming out of the pandemic, boutique was hurting. You guys obviously saw some success. I mean, coming out of that, with that huge financial transaction and, an exit for the founder. What were the qualities of Solidcore that allowed that to happen, as opposed to some of the other boutique brands in the marketplace?
It's a great question. And it's one that I think a lot about, because it's these qualities that I think ultimately become the competitive advantages that this business has that we need to continue to build on. But they honestly, Eric, map back to the things that I loved as a consumer. Um, at the end of the day, during the pandemic, across all aspects of life, what we observed was what I have sort of myself described as a flight to quality. And what I mean by that is, if you were going to go do something in the middle of the pandemic, it really had to be worth it, right? And so if you were going to go hang out with friends, they really had to be friends that you truly wanted to spend time with, right? Like, we weren't really doing
Sure.
like the casual, like, oh, like I see you once a year, like let's get drinks. Like, you weren't doing that anymore. It was like the people who you really cared about. And I
Yeah.
use that as an analogy because it was very true for that sort of aspect of our lives socially, but it also was true as we explored products and services. And so at the end of the day, people came back to Solidcore because it was a product that really worked. It was a product that if they were going to spend 50 minutes, they were going to spend X dollars doing something, they wanted it to be worth their time and they wanted it to be worth their money. And that is the ultimate value proposition, is to have a product or a service that truly meets the consumer need. So that's thing one. Thing two, we offer something that other fitness outlets and approaches to working out don't necessarily offer. We offer a full body workout in every class that you can get in 50 minutes, 50. So it's a highly efficient, really effective workout. And again, we're working those muscle groups that you may not work as you're working out by yourself at the gym or as you're doing some of the other boutique fitness modalities. And so we create a niche for ourselves that serves a very unique purpose. And then, of course, there is a community aspect of it, which, again, people really, really value being connected, having that connection, having that accountability when you show up in the studio space, having a coach who knows and says your name throughout class, giving that neighbor a high five at the end of class because you're like, holy crap, we just made it through that workout. That's really, really special for people, and was also a reason that people came back. Now, on a macro standpoint, so those are things that are sort of unique to us and things that we control. On a macro standpoint, I will also say two things coming out of the pandemic. One is people looked for workouts that they couldn't do at home. And because our workout is done on a custom reformer that is almost 11 feet long, weighs a couple 100 pounds, it's really, really hard to replicate at home. Most people, frankly, don't even have the physical space to have the machine at their house to replicate the experience. And so that, of course, was insulating for us as a business. And then two, on the other side of the pandemic, people have recognized that strength training and pursuing workouts that are strength based, like Solidcore is not only valuable for, of course, building strength today, perhaps physical transformation if that's what you're after, but frankly is the most critical thing that you can do for longevity. So when you look at all-cause mortality and you study the data, what you see is that strength training is one of the leading contributors to people living long, healthy, productive lives. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of that and are focused more on that on the other side of the pandemic than they were heading into it.
Yeah, it is exciting. I mean, the pickup in strength-based training is super exciting to me. You know, it's come up in this conversation, in this podcast, numerous times in conversations, and especially in the female demographic, right? Young female
Yeah.
demographic. I think that's really cool. My mom, she's 85. She's not a gym goer. She just started doing some strength training this week, and she's like, I feel. She's like, what? I'm like, that's called being a little sore, Mom. Right? Like, it's a good thing. She's like, I felt good after workout, but now I'm achy. I'm like, yeah, that's part of the process. And, you know, so it's never too late, I think, which is really cool too. You know, one of
So
the things that
true.
we want to get into here, Brian, is this you mentioned it, so it's a nice dovetail. A community, something that you guys have really intentionally built at Solidcore. And when you're I can't remember if you're speaking independently or on a panel
I
at
think
Connected
panel.
Health and Fitness in a panel, yeah. Uh, Building loyalty, community, and motivation, right? Those are like a couple big words that can mean a lot of things, right? But let's start with community. Like, what does that mean to you? And I always like to kind of reference, because my background was CrossFit. That was my first gym.
Hmm.
Is I got into CrossFit, and I think if there's one thing, whatever you want to say about CrossFit, you can say that really proved out that community is a very, very powerful thing, not just for branding, but for actual like retention and referrals and just building the business. So when you think about community in such a broad term, how do you guys intentionally going about building what's critical in doing that well?
It's a great question. And you're right, community can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. At the heart of what it means to me is a group of people who have a shared set of experiences, and who use that shared set of experiences to forge deeper interpersonal connection. And so to me, that is how I think about community and what we at Solidcore strive to build, right? So when you walk into a Solidcore class for the first time, the first person that you're going to meet is going to be your coach, right? They're the person who's going to guide you through the entire experience, because they're going to stand shoulder to shoulder and share that experience with you. They're going to walk you into the room where we do the workout. And they're going to introduce you to your neighbors. And a part of that is helping you know that you're not in this alone, that the experience that you're about to go through, as challenging as it may be, as foreign as it may be, if you've never done anything like it, you're not doing this alone. You're doing it with other people who are there to inspire, who are there to motivate, who are there to encourage you, not compete with you. When you're in the actual act of the class, you hear your name, because in communities, we recognize one another. We are not anonymous when we are a part of a community. And so it's really important for us to feel like we are seen. And so it's actually a requirement that our coaches are trained on, that you are required to say every client's name on a number of occasions. And it's not just like, great job, Eric. It's like speaking something specific to what you were doing, right? So it's not me just knowing you're in the room, but me actually seeing what you were doing and why I should be shouting you out. So there's a name piece, and there's a physical touch piece. We also require our coaches to provide hands-on correction and hands-on assists. Those hands-on corrections are there, of course, to make sure that you are safe and that the movement that you're doing is effective for what we're after. But then the hands-on assist, right? It's the tap on the shoulder when I can tell you're getting to like the last little bit in your gas tank, but I think you probably have one more rep in you, and you feel that person next to you tap you on the shoulder to just know I'm here with you, and you get that extra rep. Like all of those touch points through the experience, again, drive that community feeling. And then you get to the end of it and we give each other high fives. That's something that's very intentional through that experience, where again, not only did I feel like we were sharing the experience as we were going through it, but when I got to the other side of it, I celebrated you and you celebrated me, because we went through the shared experience. And all of those touch points are very intentionally designed through Solidcore's training that we give to all of our coaches, to make sure that whether you're there for the first time, the 100th time, or the 1,000th time, that you feel a part of a larger collective. I'm a Solidcore coach myself, and I always say to people, you might be on the Sweatlana alone, which is the loving name that we give to our machine. But this is a team sport. You are on that Sweatlana alone, but this is a team sport. We are all in it together. So that's really what community means to me, and how we try to make sure that it comes alive at every moment of the Solidcore experience, from the time you step in the door to the time you're given that final high five on your way out.
Excellent. Well, if you were to look across the industry and maybe give a shout out to other brands and gyms and whatever boutique, whoever, I mean, who else do you think does community well?
It's a great question, and there are several folks. So if I don't say your name, please charge it to my head, not to my heart. because there are so many who do community really, really well. And I'm going to throw out some names that may be less known because I feel like some of the big brands always get shout outs. So I will throw out 305 Fitness. 305 Fitness is dance cardio fitness. They're based out of New York. They have both an in-studio offering and a digital offering. And Sadie, who's the founder and CEO of 305, I think has done an amazing job of building an inclusive, vibrant, high energy community that's focused on fitness as fun. And fitness doesn't have to be taken as seriously. And you see that through, again, every single touch point. And those are the brands that do it the best. The brands that do it the best are the brands where it's not just like, oh, community is what happens, when I see you in the studio, or community is just what happens when we have a social event outside, but it's actually embedded in all of the touch points. And Sadie does that incredibly well. The other shout out that I'll give is a small studio here out of Washington, D.C. It's a studio called Cut 7. They are a strength-based conditioning workout. And again, it's one of those places that when you walk in, you immediately feel like everyone else wants you to be there. Everyone else is cheering you on, both literally and figuratively. And it feels like being on a sports team where, like, I recognize that you need to be on this team because if you're not on this team, we don't get to where we ultimately are going. And they make you feel that across all of their touch points in studio, on social, via email. They celebrate their team members, their athletes, as they call them. And they've just done an incredible job of building community. So those are two, again, smaller brands that folks may not know of, but always good to shout out some of those brands and help them get a little bit of airtime and some presence out there.
Yeah. I always love the shout out to the up and coming is what I call them, the up and coming, right? So the other stuff. So we touch on community pretty thoroughly there, and I presume the other two follow along or connected, kind of like a Venn diagram of some sort, right? Loyalty and motivation. What are key factors that come to mind when you hear those two words in reference to boutique?
It's another great question. On the motivation front, Eric, I think one thing that we have done, because there are a number of different things that can motivate people to show up to a workout. You may be motivated by the fact that the workout studio or gym that you're going to is the place to see and be seen, and it says something about who you are and what you value by being there. You may be motivated by physical transformation that you are looking for in your body. You may be motivated by it's your only 30, 45, 50, 60 minutes, whatever the class length may be or workout length may be, that you get to yourself. So there are a lot of differing sort of approaches to motivation, and differing brands and studios have taken usually one of those lanes and decided that that's where they ultimately want to play. At Solidcore, what we've done to not only build motivation, but also, to your point, connect it to loyalty, is we have said that the number one most important person in the room is you. It's not the coach. We don't celebritize our coaches or instructors. We always say, like, our coaches are not literally nor figuratively on a pedestal. It's really about you, the individual who walks in, and understanding what your motivating factor may be and helping you see how or why Solidcore may fit into that journey. So if it's physical transformation that you're after, your workout is only one portion of that, as we all know. But helping you understand that, like, this is actually what you get as you go through a Solidcore workout. Here are the benefits for those 50 minutes, and here are the benefits that you get over the next 24 to 36 hours as your muscles repair and rebuild. So if that's what you're after, that's great. We often talk about the mental focus that it takes to get through a Solidcore workout, and how that mental tenacity and that mental toughness not only helps you in the room, but helps you outside of the room. We often talk about being selfish with your time and using that 50 minutes to not focus on your kids, your spouse, your job, any of those things, but to really focus on you. So we really try to halo the individual and what they are after, because at the end of the day, that thing, which, by the way, may evolve over the course of a customer's lifetime with you, not only is going to keep them motivated because it's inherently personal, but it's also going to keep them loyal as they figure out how Solidcore continues to fit into their life over the long term.
Yeah. Great insights, man. And something because I'm sure you think about this all the time, but we've seen a lot of evolution over the last 3 or 4 years of the fitness consumer, like from uh, to me, like from the macro level, like 5 years ago, the gym or the health club was the center of everything, right? Like that's just you want to get healthier and fitter, you just go there, and then everything happens there that you need. Now it's so different, right? It's like, well, people work out at home, people go to a boutique, maybe people have a health club, maybe they go to the sauna, maybe blah blah blah, right? There's so many different options that it's kind of the consumer has shifted quite a bit. In your mind, like what are some of the more significant characteristics of the modern fitness consumer, and how do you see those also evolving in the next few years?
There are two things that I would say on this point. One is the underlying motivation, which I think is an amazing evolution that we've seen post COVID. When you ask people pre COVID why they are interested in working out, you hear things like weight loss. You hear things like to look better in the mirror. You hear things like, I have a vacation coming up or a wedding or what have you. It was primarily aesthetic driven. And to be fair, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having aesthetic motivation to working out.
I agree.
And I think what's really beautiful about what we are experiencing on the other side of the pandemic is that those motivations are broadening to things that are more enduring. Because at the end of the day, the wedding will come and go, the vacation will come and go, the dress that you want to fit into or pants that you want to fit into for whatever occasion will come and go. The things that people are talking about are stress relief, mental health, longevity, things that are actually important and endure for much more extended periods of time that I think will anchor people in health and wellness for a lifetime as opposed to for a season. And that is ultimately better for the individual. And so I think that's the number one sea change that I've seen in the consumer. And I hope that that continues as we look ahead. The second, and we've experienced this certainly in our business, is that people who traditionally, and they're kind of tied actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, but people who have traditionally not seen themselves, particularly in boutique fitness, so I'll kind of focus on that since that's kind of our area of expertise. People who have traditionally not seen themselves in boutique fitness are now finding a home in boutique fitness. And I think that's such an incredible unlock to communities that traditionally have been underserved. So as an example, we are seeing way more. So our business, I should step back and say our business primarily is female oriented, primarily is young, let's call that 25 to 40 years old. And what we have started to see on the other side of the pandemic is those demographics are shifting. We, of course, still have the young female, 25 to 40 years old, but what you're starting to see are people who are older. So you talked a little bit about your mom working out a few minutes ago. My mother-in-law, who is in her 60s, just hit her 50th Solidcore class.
Nice.
And I do not force her to go. She goes by her own free will, and she absolutely loves the way that it makes her feel. It makes her feel strong. It's not about fitting into this or doing that. It's about feeling strong, both mentally and physically. So we're seeing the age gap broaden. We are seeing the gender gap start to change as well, as more men recognize that going to boutique fitness, a Pilates inspired workout specifically, it can not only give you great connection and accountability that helps you get more out of your workout, but you actually work muscles that you don't work traditionally in other sort of forms of working out. You work them more consistently, and you're able to really just get more out of your time when you engage in boutique fitness. And so we're starting to see way more men come into the Solidcore fold, which has been incredible. And then the last thing that I will say, which is a personal passion point of mine as a Black man, is we are starting to see more people of color enter into the boutique sphere. And so traditionally, boutique fitness has been overwhelmingly a white space. And it's really, really awesome to see other communities, whether that's people of color, whether that's the Asian American community, start to really call boutique fitness home. And fitness should be accessible to all, and it's one of the key sort of values here at Solidcore is that we create a space that is representative of the communities in which we operate and is highly inclusive. So really, really awesome to see all of that. And again, I think that will just continue to grow in the years to come.
Right on. You and I talked about it. Came up in a conversation with Tom Dowd from F45 and their FS8, and what they're doing with Vibe as well. But Pilates seems to be kind of hot right now, man. Like, why? Why now? It's been around for a while.
Pilates has been around for a while. It's I feel like I should record you anytime someone says that fitness is a fad. I'm like, yeah, Pilates has been around for a while, actually.
Yeah.
So I think there are a few things that are happening right now that are fueling this boom in this modality. One is that people are recognizing that to build strength, build transformation, mental or physical, that the old way of thinking was that you had to throw things around or jump up and down and pound your body, and that doing that was a young person's sport. And then once you kind of aged out of it, you were kind of done working out intensely. And I think what Pilates, and particularly our sort of style of Pilates, which I would call Pilates inspired strength training, what we are educating the market on is that actually you can build real strength and get real intensity out of your workout without it coming at the sacrifice of the sustainability of the method that you're using to work out. You can actually do this methodology whether you're 18, 25, 40, or 60, because it's easy on the joints. If you have injuries, everything's done in a slow and controlled fashion that allows you to work around those injuries. There's modifications galore. So whether you're stronger on this part of your body, but have more strength to gain on this part of your body, you can modify and amplify to meet your sort of personal needs, all in a highly effective and super safe way. So that's thing number one that I think is driving the boom. The second thing is, I think there's just been an undereducation about this modality. It has traditionally been for the affluent parts of our society, and that's kind of it. And everyone else was, doing Taibo or jumping on an exercise bike at the gym or just on a treadmill. And I think what we and others in our space are starting to do is bring this methodology to the masses. Because when you start to show up on street corners, people walk by and I'm like, what's that? I've never even heard of, some people have never even heard of Pilates. They're like, what's pilots, right? And I can't blame them. That's how I used to think it was pronounced too,
Sure.
right? Like they don't even know that this type of workout exists. And so as we are showing up on more and more streets and more cities across the United States, I think this wave of awareness is going to continue to accelerate. Because again, most people have no idea that this is a way that you can work out.
Yeah, it's interesting. That you made me reflect on a chapter of my life was in Santa Barbara, California, and there was Pilates studios right around the corner from my gym. All I saw in front of it, Ferraris, Lambos, Range Rovers, right? I'm like, I'm doing something wrong, right? Because we have Hondas, right? We have old pickup trucks, but that's across the community, right? It's diverse.
Yeah.
I want to really get an uptick because I know this year you became involved in IHRSA in that role as far as advocacy, and you live in the DC area, so you're kind of right in the middle of it. What's going on with that? Especially I think I'll just ask you what's some updates with those initiatives there?
IHRSA has been a new sort of avenue of exploration for me personally and for Solidcore. I would say pre-pandemic, I knew of IHRSA, but frankly, didn't understand what IHRSA could do for our business. And I think a lot of studio owners, gym owners felt and probably today still feel that way. However, the pandemic, as it did for a lot of things in life, changed my perception of that, because what we observed during the pandemic as an industry was that we were treated in the same way that movie theaters were treated. We were treated like
Yeah.
recreation. We were treated like the extra thing that you go do once you've done everything else in life. And that is not at all how our consumer views us. Our consumer views us as integral to their life, integral to their health. And now you see all these like retrospective studies that say like, oh, people who were physically active and got COVID had a much higher um, rate of survival and had much milder symptoms. And all of us in the industry are like, yeah, duh. Of course, if you're in better shape, your body's going to handle fighting off whatever it is better than someone who's not. But that was not how we were looked at in the industry. And so I was really excited to get involved with IHRSA on the other side of the pandemic, because I, in that moment, recognized the value of advocacy. And at the same time, Liz Clark, the new president of IHRSA, had come on with a much greater advocacy focus than previous IHRSA leadership, from my understanding. And so it's been a really, really awesome opportunity to go to Capitol Hill, to meet with lawmakers and help them understand why our industry matters, so that if, heaven forbid, there's another COVID, we're thought of in a different light, but also so that when lawmakers are creating other laws and policies, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level, that potentially adversely impact our business, or have the opportunity to create laws or policies that could positively impact our business, that they think about us as they're doing that work, that they actually ask us as they're starting to do that work, so that our input is heard. And it's been, like I said, just a phenomenal opportunity to change that perception. And I think what we're doing is starting to help people understand that exercise, physical activity truly is healthcare. And, we do a lot of talking about insurance companies and reimbursement rates and who should be covered and who shouldn't be covered. But the vast majority of that is spending on challenges and problems that have already been created because of choices that individuals have made about how they're going to live their life. Whereas thinking about physical activity as a preventative measure to prevent us having to spend as much on the back end is really the way that lawmakers and policymakers should be thinking about this. So yeah, I've been really honored to be involved, and it's been a humbling experience to be on Capitol Hill and have the opportunity to speak on behalf of the industry and help them really reorient their thinking about us.
And how's it been received by legislators? Like, I always think of this example, like when you watch like tech companies talk to legislators and they're just kind of like out of touch, right? Like uh you've seen it before, right? Like they just don't understand what's going on. I mean, is it similar? Like, are they aware of the fitness industry and the benefits of it? I mean, I'm sure ones who actively participate in their own fitness are going to be a little bit more aware, but from the looks of it, some of them aren't. So like, how's it being received so far?
I would actually argue, Eric, it has been received really, really well.
Good.
And the reason for that is it's frankly obvious. It's obvious that if people take better care of their physical well-being, they can be more productive members of society. They will be less of a burden on our healthcare system. There aren't many people who are reasonably willing to argue the counterpoint to that. And so that has been a powerful unifier on, quote, both sides of the aisle. And then I think the other interesting angle to this, which is something that frankly wasn't on my radar until I went through some education sessions with IHRSA, is that there's a massive national security implication of the physical fitness of our country. And so, what
Yeah.
most people don't know is that the Army has actually failed to meet their recruiting targets for multiple years. And not like, oh, we missed by 5%, but like they're off by like 40 or 50%. Like they're off by a significant margin. And that is having a lot of people in Washington start to think about how do we, starting at very young ages, really impress upon our society here in the United States that physical activity and physical fitness is really important. It's important for their longevity, but selfishly as a country, it's really important for our national security as well. And so it's been interesting as we've been on the Hill to hear the talking points that resonate with different folks and different backgrounds. But again, it's one of these topics that has truly bipartisan support because, again, it's very hard to argue that healthier people isn't better in some way for this country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we love our military here. And, yeah, that is undeniable in this country. So, kind of a fun question, man. I know you and I talked a little bit about technology, even we won't mention any partnerships that we discussed earlier, but, I love talking about fitness and health technologies here. But when you look at the technology aspect of it, is there anything that has you particularly excited? Everyone talks about wearables, everyone talks about trackers, everyone talks about AI, everyone talks about all these things, right? I've talked about them quite a bit. What gets you excited on the technology side?
I would say that I am most excited about AI. And the reason that I'm most excited about AI is that I feel like the implications are deep reaching within our industry. And so I think there are things that AI can to some extent today, but certainly will over time be able to do that will help gym owners, business leaders within the health and fitness space operate their businesses more efficiently, more profitably, etc. I think that will be transformational as you think about uh, contract review, customer service, etc. So I think there's a lot that AI will do that will transform kind of the back office of our industry. And I think the most exciting part, even in the face of that, is actually how AI has the ability to transform the consumer experience. And so, as we think about things like personalization at mass scale in a way that keeps consumers more engaged, which of course is great for business, but most importantly is great for consumers' health, I think that will drastically unlock sort of LTV within our industry. If you can really understand what is motivating Eric to work out, what's motivating Bryan to work out, hit either of us with the right message at the right time, the right offer at the right time, the right cross training opportunity at the right time, that keeps us excited and engaged, we as individuals will get to our goals and objectives faster and be able to maintain them for longer. And then we as business owners will reap the benefits of having consumers who are engaged longer, spending more, but they're doing it because it's something that's actually transforming their life for the better. So I think AI is going to, I mean, like it is in most industries, but particularly in ours, I think is going to be transformational.
Right on. I love it. Bryan, last question for you, two-part question, but in spirit of collaboration within the industry, how can we help you? What do you need help with right now? And then where would you like people to go online, or how would you like them to get in touch with you?
You should absolutely, I'll start in reverse. You should absolutely check us out. Our website is www.solidcore.co, no M on the .co. You can also check us out on Instagram at Solidcore. And personally, you can follow me. I am at B as in Bryan, MY, so fly. So BMY so fly, be my so fly. Check me out on Instagram. I am very active. I have some content that I like to think is funny.
Okay.
Definitely follow me. And then in terms of how you all can help me, I honestly would just say spread the gospel. So what I described earlier, there are so many people who don't recognize that this slow and controlled resistance-based strength training that's Pilates inspired, done on a reformer, is a way that you can work out and get strength and transformation in your body and your mind, and find an incredible community to go along with all of that. Like, so many people are just not tapped in to that, and we would love to see them under the blue lights and give them a great experience. So if you know anyone who's looking to change up their workout routine or incorporate something new in their routine, definitely send them our way.
Right on. Bryan, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're a busy guy. It's great to get an hour of your time this Friday, and yeah, excited to see you present at Connected Health and Fitness. And once again, if people, as a media partner, it's FOF10. I hope I'm getting that right. People want to get in and get their discount tickets because it's not a lot of tickets that they sell. So get in there early, and you can go watch brilliant people like Bryan talk. So really appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen. Bryan Myers.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Really appreciate it.